Most Pokemon games feature the Fisherman Trainer class as a way to show off some Pokemon that can be obtained through fishing. There's nothing weird about that, but did you know that in the Japanese versions of Gold and Silver, the Fisherman class has what looks like a cigarette in his mouth? This was removed in the international versions of the game and is one of the more obscure forms of censorship to happen in a Pokemon game. Today we'll talk more about censorship in Pokemon, from the games to anime to everywhere else, some of which you might not even know before, so stay tuned. We'll talk more about weird sprites like the Fisherman sprite later, but did you know that there's a lot of censored Pokemon cards? For example, we have this Grimer from the Team Rocket set that is peering out of the sewer with some people walking by. If you notice in the Japanese version of this card art though, Grimer's eyes are looking up towards a girl's skirt, which is why they decided to change it for the English version, so he's looking straight on instead. Reasons like this are mainly why cards got censored when they were translated, like this card Misty's Tears, which has a very different artwork in Japanese. For some reason, instead of just having a crying Misty comforted by a Squirtle, they have a crying Misty holding a Staryu while she's naked. There's the Moo Moo Milk card art too from the Neo Genesis set that looks fine when you look at the English art. Then there's the Japanese art, and there's just a lot to unpack here. I don't know if I'm even allowed to show this image on YouTube, but we have a Sentret lying down and getting Moo Moo Milk directly from the source. Sabrina's Gengar was censored too, with the Japanese version showing it standing in a cemetery and the English version just having this white hollow foil background with not much to it. Religious symbols in general tend to be censored a lot in Pokemon, whether it's the games, the video games, or anything, like the Sage sprite in Gold and Silver as well as Heart Gold and Soul Silver. The Japanese versions of the original Gold and Silver games of the Sage appears to be praying, while the international releases have his arms folded. In Heart Gold and Soul Silver, the Japanese and international sprites showcase the Sage holding what looks like prayer beads. This seems like something that would have been removed or at least altered for the American releases, however it was only censored in the Korean version of the game to remove the prayer beads. The weirder thing about that is that in Pokemon Gold and Silver, the sprite for the Psychic Median is also holding prayer beads in the Japanese version, but those prayer beads were censored for the American release roughly a decade before Heart Gold and Soul Silver came out. Pokemon Red and Blue has some religious references too, and you can find some statues of Digletts in the Celadon City apartment building. Now Digletts, to my knowledge, aren't very religious, but in the Japanese version, these Diglett sprites look very differently and are actually supposed to be Buddhist altars. Also, for Pokemon Red and Blue's international releases, the Lavender Town theme was altered a little bit. There's a lot of stories behind Lavender Town in general, but the main reason why the Lavender Town theme was changed for international releases was to make it sound less creepy for kids, and because of rumored reports that children would get headaches from the high pitch of the original theme. Then in Pokemon Gold and Silver, Lavender Town was given a much more cheerier theme overall and had a major overhaul in the entire city to give it a very different feel from the Lavender Town from Red and Blue. In Pokemon Gold and Silver, the Japanese versions call the bike shop the Miracle Cycle Shop, which persists in Pokemon Heart Gold and Soul Silver as well. For some reason though, the name was removed in the international versions of the game, so the bike shop just doesn't have a proper name. I don't know why they would do that for the bike shop, but if you're still watching, then chances are you're enjoying this video, so consider leaving a like and subscribing for more Pokemon videos. In Pokemon Diamond and Pearl, the Conolave Library infamously has a book depicting people marrying Pokemon in the olden days. This was censored in the international releases to just say people and Pokemon used to sit down at the same table and eat together. Also in Diamond and Pearl and Platinum as well, some dialogue was changed in the game corner to comply with PEGI's new rating standards at the time regarding gambling in video games released in Europe. So they had to tone down the gambling references as much as possible in a casino, which is a bit odd. PEGI's new rating standards are also a big reason why gambling and game corners in general don't really appear in Pokemon games anymore. In the Japanese versions of Pokemon Red and Blue, the Mew journals found in Cinnabar Island imply that a single person discovered Mew, as it uses the Japanese pronoun watashi, which just translates to I. In the international versions, it was changed to say we instead, which was most likely changed to fit more with the first Pokemon movie showing multiple scientists work on and discover Mew and Mewtwo. Generation 5 introduced some censoring when it comes to Pokemon nicknames. This was to prevent people from giving Pokemon inappropriate nicknames then trading them off online. However, they didn't take into consideration the fact that some Pokemon have inappropriate words that just happen to appear in various parts of their names, like Kofagrigus, Frostlass, and Nosepass. Now for some more sprites that were censored. The bulk of these come from Generation 2, like the beauty sprite who is winking and has a shorter skirt in the Japanese versions. The girl swimmer who is also winking, since winking just isn't allowed outside of Asia, I guess. The Hex Maniac sprite in Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald who didn't have pupils in the Japanese version. Kinda creepy looking if you ask me. The Psychic Trainer class in Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald had her arms spread out a bit more because it looked like she was trying to grab something. The Sailor in Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald is now giving a thumbs up in the international versions as opposed to it looking at you like you just cut him off on the highway. And the male Cool Trainer changed his hairstyle. This one really isn't censoring, I just thought it was really weird how of all things they decided to change, this guy's hair was one of them. The PI Trainer class was also famously changed from being a gamer or gambler in the Japanese versions, much like how the Gamer Trainer class from the original Red and Blue was actually a gambler in the Japanese version. Now for sprites of actual Pokemon, many of the Gen 2 Pokemon sprites were changed, and maybe in the future we can look at general Pokemon changes between the Japanese versions and international versions of these Pokemon games. But for now, let's just focus on the ones that were changed for censorship reasons and not just random subtle changes for no real reason. First, there's Jinx. I'm sure you all know about this one, but if I didn't mention Jinx, I'm sure a lot of people would in the comments. And no Pokemon sprites were censored in Generation 3, but one was in Generation 4, and it was Registeel. This one was censored in the non-English European releases of the game to have its arms down, as the stance was eerily similar to a stance that some no-no Germans would do in the 20th century. I do also want to point out that despite them censoring some things that are deemed to be too sexual, like winking, they never censored Feraligator's Generation 3 sprite, as every release of the game shows its butt crack. At least in Generation 4 they cropped it so you can't see Feraligator's butt no more. Now I don't know if this is a result of censorship, but I always thought it was weird that naming an item that restores PP Ether in the English versions didn't make much sense. The Japanese name for either, PP Aid, makes a whole lot more sense, but something about a kids game letting you get an item called PP Aid probably didn't go over too well with the team responsible for localizing the game, so I understand the name change. This one is one of my favorites too, and one I reference a lot, but in the Generation 1 Pokemon games, that man who blocks you from leaving Viridian City until you deliver Oak's parcel back to him is actually passed out drunk in the Japanese version and not letting you pass. In the English versions, it says something about him being cranky about not having his coffee yet, and when he sobers up, he shows you how to catch a Pokemon. The Pokemon anime also had a lot of censorship over the years, but some of my favorites include Giovanni having his wine glass changed to be just a regular drinking glass with juice, just what every evil leader of a crime syndicate needs. And a similar thing happened to Professor Kukui and Professor Burnett's wine glasses in the Pokemon Sun and Moon anime, which were changed to be mugs. They still had juice in it though, even though they were mugs and not tea or coffee, which would have made a bit more sense. There's also the famous examples of food being censored in the Pokemon anime for some reason. In the Japanese anime, they depict Japanese foods like onigiri, but in the English anime, it'll be a jelly donut or a sandwich. It's apparently to make it more suited for an American audience, since we Americans love jelly donuts and sandwiches, but it's still a bit weird. There's a lot of banned Pokemon episodes too, which I guess counts as censorship. However, I mainly want to focus on instances where the episode was released outside of Japan and also altered in some way. Like how in the very first episode of the anime, Misty slaps Ash, but that was cut out in the English dub. In the third episode of the anime, another instance where Misty slaps Ash was also cut out in the dub. And mostly just instances of Misty hitting Brock or Ash were just cut in the original anime. Most of the censored episodes for the Pokemon anime came early on, typically between the first and third generations, but the third generation of Pokemon had some really weird ones. For example, in one episode of the Advanced Generation saga, James and Max had their head catch on fire from Torchic trying to go for the Ember attack, which was cut out from the dub for being too violent. In the episode A Corphish Out of Water, a Carvana is seen hitting Ash in the back of the head, which was also cut out in the dub. There is also an episode that depicts a Poliwrath slapping Jessie from Team Rocket, and you can see red spots on her cheek in the Japanese version from the slaps. This was of course seen as being too violent and was cut from the English dub in the United States. However, they actually put that scene back in for the Pokemon TV releases that you could still watch on the app. And those were just some weird forms of Pokemon censorship from the games, anime, card game, and everywhere else. Some of it is pretty widely known of course, and some of it was pretty weird, and some I didn't even know until making this video. If you know anything like this, let me know in the comment section down below, and also consider clicking that join button next to the subscribe button to become a YouTube channel member for some extra support. Thank you for watching, and bye bye.